Oh, hi. I didn't see you come in. Yeah, I did see you come in. It's in space. There's only one door. Call the spaceships to Davenport. Prepare for Divanarchy and interface with the couch in space. My levels are all over the place despite all my testing. We'll do one of those. How are you? Already went through the intro copy. Gertrude's already in the Twitch chat room. What's up, Gertrude? Um, this is going to be a great show. Space Couch Time, says Ray. Yes. Um, and because it's Space Couch Time, you know it's also a quick advertising spot time. Ladies and gentlemen, our advertiser this week is Tiger Squawk Records. How do we get them? I don't know. They just believe in this product. Check out Fazaz City from Science Fiction. It's so good. Also want to check out Lost Soundtracks from Grasp Logic. Very creepy. Isserly's new album, Tapeworm Hole, Eat Your Face. Pre-amplifier Cedar Hill Furniture is back in a big way. 808, again from Grasp Logic. He's been on a roll. Also want to check out Volt 9000's new offering, Viral. Lots of guest stars on that. One of them's me. Club Ovator's back with Impostorable. Love that title. Siren's Hope, collection of past releases. Batavia is changing the game with Quite Mean Spirited Leather Strip remix, and original tracks are next level. What's up to Shmee Pills? Gentleman Junkie is here. What's going on? Dre Robinson from Scilab, and some band named Skinny Puppy is also in the trap. Thomas Novak is here. We've got a great episode coming in just a second. So, ladies and gentlemen, today's guest, I'm very excited about, and not just because we kind of have the same haircut. Somebody I've known like a little for like a while, but we're gonna get into it today. So, without further ado, oh, Dinesh is here. Okay, this is gonna now it's gonna be a good show. Okay, all right, ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Alex. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, not much. How are you?
Just space stuff like nebulas and crab nebulas and Oort clouds.
How's
All
the
that.
quasar?
It's pretty good. I thought his first release was a little bit better, and the second one was like fine, but like that first album's really where you want to be.
I hear he's working on someone that's going to go totally supernova next.
Hey, yeah, Quasar's blowing up. Oh man, I'm so excited. Speaking of blowing up, let's just get right into your recent releases, because you just did a double barrel shotgun blast. Double album, Birdwatcher's Guide to Atrocity and Monster are out now. Let's start like kind of high level, because I'm in space, so everything's going to be high level, and then drill down. Like, is there a general feeling or gestalt from these two releases?
Yeah, so the Birdwatcher's Guide to Atrocity, that's like the main record that we put out. And yeah, absolutely. There's like a new feeling that you could generally sum up from it. It's basically like, how do you stay sane as an individual in an insane world, and also someone who wants to change that world and make that world a better place, but you're sort of confronting the limits of your power in that world, not necessarily because you're marginalized or not necessarily because you're weak or anything like that, but because the decisions of being like a halfway decent person basically naturally keep you out of the conversation of power to begin with. That is to say, anyone who's in charge and who has any say over the world only got there by being a complete horrible person. At least it feels that way to me, right? And so if you act with compassion, if you think about how others feel, if you recognize recognize the humanity of other people, then you are, then you find yourself when you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 in some position where you're like, well, this is great. Maybe I've got a world in front of me that I can control. But ultimately, the criminals are, still in charge of everything. So it's kind of grappling with that. And to that effect, I have kind of two threads that run through the album. One is this thread of just abject rage, right? Songs like
Right.
The Flood Comes for You or End Studies, where I'm just kind of saying, all right, let's do it. Let us burn down the White House or whatever it's
Hmm.
going to be. But on the other hand, I've got this thread of songs that are more sort of therapeutic. And this is songs like Go Small or Reality is Afraid or Learn to Vanish or something like that. And these are songs that's focused on, what you can do when you're just, by yourself in your place, creating a small community of maybe a few like-minded people, and basically how you can make a difference in the world, not necessarily by winning an election, but by, feeding someone you care about or by like adopting a stray animal.
We've hit, I think this is episode 76. This is the first episode I've hit the chill moment in the first 6 minutes of the show. That's amazing.
It's
I,
just how I roll.
I, I'm finding that out. Gosh, there was so much going on there. Like, it has seemed like that my entire life that like I'm doing the best I can, and I do my job, and I have my dog, and I eat my broccoli, and the only way I'm gonna get ahead is by stepping on this other dude's throat. Has been the theme of like any political thing or micro level like office thing or scene thing, which is a whole other ball of wax.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so to compact that into an album is incredibly powerful, and people are saying as much. Gertrude says, "Hell yeah!" Ray says the new album is awesome. Dre says, "Word." Oh, Alex is here. What's going on? Shmisel says, "Motivating." Yeah, you're getting a lot of support on that. To that end, let's check out because I'll get going yapping if I don't forget. Let's check out a little bit of the aforementioned music. Here's clips from Birdwatcher's Guide to Atrocity and Monster, which we'll get into in a second.
I was born to make my kind extinct. Let me tell you about the studies. My wistful skin is militant. The grief I'm in. So grief is a plan guiding all that I am. I bruised, I paid my dues. More of a process and I am a man. Infused, it's what I choose. Discipline my wistful.
And okay, so that was awesome. That was Monster and End Studies. We talked a little bit while you were hearing that, just because I'm fascinated. Um, so. Uh, excuse me, Seeming had taken a bit of a pause, at least a year or two. What do these I'm going to call them albums, but they're kind of companion pieces, I would say. Yeah.
Hmm.
What and people love it. Denisha says one of my favorite songs. What where do these go that other Seeming releases might not have, or are you kind of carrying a torch?
I mean, there's always continuity from
Mm-hmm.
one project to the next, and yet there's always a difference. And part of this is the fact that like I still just remain the same person who talks about the same things, and like I've written songs about the fact that I can't seem to change the subject. Like
Mm-hmm.
track one off the previous album, a song called Doomsayer, is entirely about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also, every time I write a song, I feel like I have to reinvent music, and I know that obviously
Yeah.
I have like I have styles or whatever, but like you get acts who like let's say that you're playing in a heavy metal band, you walk into the studio and you've gotten certain assumptions, right? Okay, there's going to be a guitar, there's going to be a bass, you're
Right.
going to be using distortion, you're going to be singing the way that you sing or whatever. And that's not to say that I don't fall back on my own assumptions, but any electronic musician knows this. You've got like the entire world, at your fingertips.
Oh man.
And so, do you want to be, using some like, Juno sounding lead, or do you want to be using 808 drums, or do you want to be using samples, or do you want to be, bringing in like a live brass choir and gospel choir, which is what I find myself doing for some stupid reason. And
Sounds great though.
not stupid because they are stupid, but stupid because it's like logistically a nightmare to get these things to happen.
I can only
Um,
imagine.
and I have this like terrible modernist drive always to be doing something new, always to be reinventing, and always to be changing, and always to be widening the Overton window. Like I remember ages and ages ago when I was making like my second album, um, and I was first coming to terms with the fact that I wanted to have both like folk music and power noise on the same record, right?
Yeah.
Which to me these days, all these years later, seems like a total gimme. I'm like, of course,
Right.
I'm going to mix folk and power noise. Like, what else would you do as a human
I
being,
mean,
right?
it's
Like,
Tuesday.
you get put on the planet Earth. Well, you could eat a bunch. You could, travel around. Nope, I'm going to sit in a studio playing an acoustic guitar and distort some drums.
Arlex the robot says flower noise.
Yeah, oh, flower noise. Holy shit.
We
That
just-
is
new
That is
genre.
the next
You just
album.
did it. You
Flower
just did
noise
it,
is
dude.
the new genre. Yes. Yeah.
And I want to, as long as I'm jumping in, World Burners on Twitch corrected me. I said the name of the song was Monsters. It's Grief. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So,
Okay. It's all good.
yes, you have this like arsenal at your fingertips for every song all the time.
Yeah, and so like what that allows me to do is sort of explore within it, or occasionally to expand that palette a little bit. And sometimes there are just aesthetic motivations behind that. Sometimes there are political motivations behind it. Like on the 2017 album we did, which is called Soul, a Self-Banishment Ritual, I was really concerned with like race and identity, and I was coming out of a time when I was thinking a lot about the influence that like black music and funk had on industrial in the early days. I'm a big hip hop fan, especially golden age stuff, and thinking, all right, how can I make a record that understands that and doesn't exclude this, but also doesn't tokenize it. So I was, really working toward that on that record. On these new records that I made, I was looking at sort of roomier sounds. I was looking to make something that sounded, and this is going to sound weird, I was looking to make something that sounded domestic. And that's like a word that people don't really associate very often with goth and industrial
Right.
music, right? Because we love the epic, right? We love Andrew Eldritch, twirling around talking about Floodland with 12-minute songs and stuff.
Cinematic, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everybody loves that. I love that.
Oh, yeah.
But I wanted to think, all right, but how do you make a record that uses those ideas, that still has something to say to someone who, for example, is stuck in their house for 8 months during
Right.
quarantine lockdown, So, and like I didn't know that was going to happen yet when I made the record, but magic happens. And yeah, that was really a lot of it. It was just, a question of how do you make a record that sounds tight and small. And part of that was, the other thing is that it was a reaction against the previous album, because the last album, the 2017 one, was this, full hour-long gigantic 13-track thing that was as big a statement as I'm likely ever to make, and I didn't want to try to outdo it,
Okay.
and you can't just make bigger, darker, heavier, faster, louder all the time. I mean, sometimes you just need to make a lateral move, and so I kind of wanted to make something that felt more like a Ramones record than
Wanted
like
to,
Pink Floyd,
Go small.
as it were. What an phrase, yeah.
The well, it sounds great. But you went at least double album because we also have Monster out now.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Monster is, it's a neat release. I think one of the fans commented that it reminds them of my old band, Thou Shalt Not, which is funny because that was my thought on it too, and I didn't mean for that to happen, right? I just, I was making songs for this album for Birdwatchers, and you find that maybe, I don't know about you, but like when I'm making a record, not everything ends up making the cut, especially when I'm trying to make a really, really tight record.
Totally.
And that doesn't mean that these other songs are lesser. It doesn't mean that they're worse. In fact, in some cases, I think that they're, giant, sprawling, really cool things. But because I didn't want because I didn't want my main record to be giant and sprawling, I kind of put the big pieces over on Monster, and so it's a little bit more atmospheric. And yeah, it's not just like leftover songs, but it's these sort of bigger concerns that allow the Birdwatcher's Guide record to be this tight gut punch that it is.
Well, I love it.
Thank you.
And these two albums, not only sonically, but visually, are connected. I know we were talking a little bit about this during the break, but the Renaissance, if that's the right word to use, monsters. And you're a literate professor, so feel free to correct me on any of this. That appear on the cover of the album are extremely evocative. Why the choice to use that style?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like attracted to it, and I'm sure that I'm, along with like every other goth in the world, is like, oh, interesting, medieval things, old things, that's exciting.
Sign me up.
Right. I mean, that's just another gimme. But I also don't really like putting pictures of myself on the cover of things, and I feel like I lean so hard on like modern politics in what I talk about and what I sing about that I didn't really want to like triple down in the artwork for that. Like I wanted to leave a little bit of interpretive leeway by putting something a little bit more abstract. But yeah, the cover of Birdwatcher's Guide is Icarus falling from the sky. And one, it's got some commentary on like flight and human ambition and crashing and crisis and things like that, and it plays kind of interesting sideways tricks with the title. And the title came before the artwork, and the title just kind of came to me in like a dream. Basically, it doesn't really come from anything. It's just like this is what it's going to be. I woke up one day and I'm like, that's the title of the album.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I do a lot of weird ass magical dream work stuff. Basically, like I keep like
also sign me up.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I my doctor sometimes has me take Ambien because I have trouble sleeping, and I'll like wake up in the middle of the night and write like insane poetry, and like I'll see it the next morning. I'm like, I have no memory of writing this, but it says go crazy in the alleyway. I'm like, all right, guess I have to go do this. So I'm a big fan of the subconscious. But yeah, so it's got this picture of Icarus on the front, and I also like that that's got like ties back to the previous album, which was called Soul, SOL, which is all about the sun, and the sun melts him because of hubris and blah blah blah. I don't know. I just like intertextuality, and I like the smell of intertextuality itself more than the specific details of it, by which I mean I really like the feel that a lot is going on, and I don't necessarily need to know every detail that's going on, and I don't necessarily need to tell fans or interpreters, you're right, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're right, or something like that.
No, I dig that. That's awesome. Yeah, there's
so I like
I
like the feeling of meaningfulness, like the sort of big portentous sense of importance that like the Gothic, when it's doing its big cinematic sweep, can really beautifully convey, even devoid of content.
Well, that's also awesome. You would know because you wrote a book on it, and we'll get into that in a second. I want to be semi-professional. We can get these new albums at seeming.bandcamp.com.
We can. Yep. You can do the Bandcamp thing. If you are interested in participating in mainstream culture, you can do it on Spotify as well. You can do it however you want to do it. I happen to like Bandcamp. And I'm sure that there are a few people who are like, no, I stand for Deezer. And great, you do you. You can find it on all the major services, and we're probably available in your local Walmart.
All right. Awesome. Artifact, yeah?
Artifact Records, absolutely, with
Very
Yatsek
cool.
and Jeremy.
Very
Yep.
cool. Big ups to Artifact, friend of the show. You had mentioned staying in for 8 months or whatever we're on now, and that has resulted in some cool online appearances. Terminus and Stay In Fest. Love that name. How are you finding the online show experience?
There are a few things that I like about the online show experience. One, you can, at least short of like tech glitches with the broadcast itself, you can have some control over the sound, which if you've ever been, and I don't know if you, Brian Graupner, would ever know anything about this, but if you've ever been in like a touring band that sometimes, is in the bracket where they don't give you like a full sound check.
Oh, that's never happened.
Oh, I know, and especially if you're in like a touring band where like part of the appeal is the lyrics, which I don't know if you know anything about this.
Not a thing.
Right, exactly. Because like if people can't understand what you are saying when like the Gothsicles are on stage, it's like, who is this yelping thing on stage? Oh my God. And like I had that happen, enough dozens of times when I was touring, with my old band Thou Shalt Not, and when I was touring with Seeming and things like that, that I kind of enjoy, being able to like get up in front of like a nice microphone and like sing clearly or something like that. And yeah, I sort of appreciate the presentation. That said, there's such a focus on the visual, and I'm not as much of like a visual kind of person, and so I sometimes feel like, I don't know, what should I do, and so like when it comes time to shoot a video, I'm like, we'll just sing it in the woods. We'll just go out to the woods. We will be in the forest where this feels right to me. And like, if you demand that everything is shiny, and if you demand that everybody has makeup, and if you demand that everything be animated, and if you like, this is no dig against people who love this stuff, but like, I am not your one-stop shop for that stuff, and and that's just how I'm programmed. So go get that from somebody else. But when you want to listen to people screaming in the woods, I'm definitely your one-stop shop for that.
Oh yeah, yeah. We are sympathetic on that regard too. I get pretty grimy, and I've been doing some woods performances. So we'll get into that in a second. I just want to circle back into one thing that Ray is reminding me of. Your Patreon-only performances are fantastic.
So thank you. So I've got a few things that I do. The other part of this, right? So like I'm at a piano right now, right?
Yeah, I love it. That's a Seeming original for you, Space Couch original.
4 chords only for you.
Yeah.
You're right. Stick that in your Cadillac and blow it up. So the thing that I enjoy about like the sort of new twitchy streaming world that we've all been forced kicking and screaming into is that sometimes I can just be like, hey, you know what? It's late on a Saturday night. I am bored. I want to just like sit down and just like play some music, and I can just do that. I can just like flip it on and like unannounced, right? And so like you can go follow me on Twitch. I'm on twitch.tv/salexanderreed, REED. You can like follow me on Twitch. Yeah, there it is. And like every 2 or 5 weeks, I'll just like impromptu sit down and like play a bunch of stuff, either of my own or improvised or covers or something like that. Like a week ago, I sat down and I played like a dozen songs by The Cure unannounced, just like for fun. That's awesome. And then I also do stuff for my patrons. I've got like a big Patreon community. They just started a Discord server, which is awesome. But yes, you can also go to patreon.com/salexanderreed, and I've made like 300 and something extra posts up there full of essays and extra songs and outtakes and live cuts and weird videos of me like playing with my cats, things like that. So it's a nice outlet for an overactive brain. Hi, Meredith. No,
you're fine. It's all good. I maybe Space Dog will come on the show today, but she doesn't like to do that normally. So yeah. You're fine. But awesome. That sounds like a pretty lit Patreon. You are not doing it just because you have to. That sounds
no. It's actually like a mild sanity retaining measure, because otherwise I would have no place to put all these things that I do. I post like once every 2 or 3 days. I have an insane amount of stuff up there, and if you pay just $2 a month, you can get access to a lot of it, and if you pay even more, you can get access to even more. So there's that. I just did a cover, for example. Like if you pay like 3rd tier, you can tell me what songs to cover. I basically turn into a singing monkey for you. And so I'm like steadily making my way through this pile that people have requested. And just yesterday I dropped like a full on like goth EBM version of These Are the Days by 10,000 Maniacs. It's great. So yeah. I mean, like these things will probably like eventually come out on Spotify or Bandcamp or something like that. But for now, there's probably 12 hours worth of Patreon only stuff.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Check out that Patreon. With all that woods buildup, though, let's take a look at some of these videos. This will do. Let's do that. We're gonna cut to video now. If I set this up right.
But you don't flinch when it gets colder. In this chill, something is forming. We feel the shiver of the wind, the when we hear the rain begin. Reality is shaking, reality is wringing its hands, 'cause we've run beyond its radius. Reality's afraid of us. Watch 'em now. Reality will cave to demands. Darling, we are dangerous. Reality's afraid of us. Write the song you need to hear. Write it on the palm of your hand. When the world is drowned in flames, write something you can understand. Go small, go small, go small, go small. 'Cause when you try to see it all, you'll see the earth is radiantly suicidal. Well, the earth is radiantly suicidal. So if there's any play in favor of survival, it's go small. Gonna build the room.
And we're back. Okay, so yeah, you shot two awesome videos in the woods. Just because I've been doing that a little bit for some online shows for gasoline and vertebrate. Was that a giant pain with like running on like battery power? Like, come on, we gotta get the shot. Or
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier, I will put effort into my visuals in certain registers and things like that. And that's not to say like these videos aren't high effort because of that, like, because like they're totally heartfelt. But like to me, when I am going completely like high production, it actually doesn't feel very heartfelt to me. I don't know. So yeah, that was us going out into the woods with a little handheld camera, or in some cases like an iPhone, and just doing it old school. I try to focus on where I want the sort of high production value and the elaborate work in my output to be. That is to say, I'll pay to have a brass choir, I'll pay to have a string quartet or something like that, because I care about that, and I know that there's a difference for me between doing it right and doing it wrong, and yet sometimes I just want to go out and just jump around in the forest a little bit.
awesome. Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
what? I was just gonna say no. It's super effective for the theme and the content therein. Um, I totally dig it. I just like because I've been doing this myself recently. Like we were talking about, like getting eaten by mosquitoes during the break and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot going on. Um, Oh, Grass Logic here says very awesome. Dre from Scilab says thou shalt not. That's where I know you from. Let's get into that a bit if we could.
Yeah.
Could you talk about the transition from, because I think that's where I saw you first at the Inferno in Madison, where I
hmm
used to
hmm
live. The transition from thou shalt not into seeming.
Yeah. So Thou Shalt Not was a band that I started when I was a teenager,
Hmm.
and it served me pretty well. That is to say, we made some records. We were on ADSR Music Works out of Seattle, and then we were on absolutely, Mike Weimer
Shout out to
represent.
Naked Mike.
Uh, yeah, absolutely. And then we were on Dancing Ferret out of Philadelphia, and gosh, it was a band that I found by the time I was sort of done with it as a name and as a project and as a sound. I felt like I had sort of run my course with some of these ideas. And of course, I'm still the same person, but
Mhm.
also I'm not the same person, because this is this whole passage of time
Totally,
being
yeah.
right. I know how very Kierkegaardian, right? Um, so
Professor, you say?
yeah. And so yeah, I kind of wanted to get away from some of the Judeo-Christian imagery that it was wrapped up in, and I kind of wanted to get away from some of the sort of stylistic concerns. And I feel like it was always so literary and always so concerned with these abstractions that that it never managed to like punch you in the face.
Mm.
Like I feel like I mean like I know that there are people who love those records, and I know that like it still, has more listeners than like the new project and stuff like that. So, hey, whatever works. And I still like a lot of those songs, but for a little while, I really needed to distance myself from those records and those songs. And I really wanted to do something new and more immediate and more political and more confident and more willing to be extreme in a lot of ways. And I really wanted to have a mouthpiece where I could voice maybe some more dangerous ideas, and try to break some rules rather than follow some rules. And yeah, so and the other thing, of course, is that like I went like 6 years without putting out a record, right? We did an album in 2006. That was the last full length Thou Shalt Not album. It was called Land Dispute, and it was kind of this like post punky thing because in 2006 that was the world, and then. Gosh, time just started passing, and by the time it was like 2012, 2013, and I'm like, geez, I'm not feeling this anymore, and like, I don't really know how much of a fan base there is anymore. And I'm having all these new sort of ideas. I kind of took a pretty hard left political bent during that time, and I said, okay, let's just try something new from the ground up. I was living in New York City at the time, and I was just really wanting to, I don't know, immerse myself in something that felt fresh. So yeah, so the Seeming Project was the advent of that, and we did this one song early on called "The Burial" that that got a nice amount of attention right off the bat, and that seemed to be a good encouragement to plow right ahead, and so plow right ahead we have.
Yeah, that caustic coital staircase remix you did was so good. It's so good.
Thanks.
Oh God, I love it. That is fascinating to me because I think you and I are now at the age from having started these things when we were kids, and now can kind of go back and look at it objectively, maybe as possible. Um, the "Thou Shalt Not" sound to your mind or ear, it got so heightened that it kind of got lost? Or when you say you lost the ability to punch people in the face, that is very interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, part of it was also, I mean, like, I don't want to spend like time like slagging my old music or anything like
Right.
that. But
It's just it's an interesting concept.
yeah, I just wanted to be able to do something a little bit more. So two things. One, I wanted to do something simpler, right? I grew up this sort of snotty kid who just wanted complexity in everything, right? So I was just over ambitious, over educated, and I couldn't figure out why people weren't like loving the music that I was making. I'm like, but it has so many tracks. How can you not like it? Which is not how anything works,
Oh,
right?
God.
I'm like,
Yeah.
but this is inspired by Shakespeare. Fuck it, and like, so why is that not good? And I'm like, gosh, you need to get out of this like more is more mindset. And I just spent a lot of time listening to like, oh, I don't know, in like the 2010, 2015 era, I was listening to like a lot of Nina Simone and Diamanda Galas and like Fairport Convention and these like old sort of immediate folk tinged things that that really with just like one person and her guitar or her piano or whatever would just like rip your throat out, right? And I'm like, I want to do that. Like, I don't care how many instruments I have going on. I don't care how high minded these ideas are. I just want to just hit the world with a sledgehammer, basically,
nice.
because apparently my sitting here carving filigree with fine tools is not doing the job. Nobody was really caring. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. You want to be the rogue in the D&D party that takes down the giant with one precise knife strike.
Well, yeah, and I think that as you get older, I mean, I'm like, this is tying back to some of the stuff that I was saying right at the beginning. As I become a little bit more frustrated, with the practicalities of existing in the world in an intelligent, compassionate way, it's not that I want to do everything and be a Renaissance person, but as the world has gotten more dire, under Trump or whatever, I'll settle to make like one big change. I would be happy to be, someone who accomplishes, like there was the 19-year-old, who started World War One. I'm not saying World War One was good. I'm not saying that what he did was good, but like when he assassinates Archduke Ferdinand, like that is one sledgehammer to history right there. Again, I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'm not saying that you should kill political leaders, but but I'm saying that like sitting down and writing very, very complicated poetry and publishing it in like a goth scene might not be your ticket to change.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
We got the chat room is blowing up a little bit about something I want to get into. So, speaking of history and change over time, you are a published author in no small way. What do we need to know about Assimilate, a critical history of industrial music?
Okay. 3 things to know about Assimilate. I just came up with 3, right? First of all, it gets a small number of things wrong, right? So in the years that have passed since then, there are like a few things that I wanted to go back and fix that I might yet go back and fix, and I wanted to because like some of it is like factual stuff. Like I heard from Sasha at one point that like I got a fact about KMFDM wrong, and I apologize for that, right? Like I know that I got 1 or 2 facts about Skinny Puppy not quite right, so I apologize for that. I'm not going to be someone who says, nope, your history is different than what you say it was. So like, that's all good, and like I'm not here to make enemies, but I'm also not here to get like just love from the luminaries of the scene, right? And so it's subtitled A Critical History of Industrial Music. So point 2 is that I get a lot of things right. And by that I mean,
I love it.
By that I mean like in the broad strokes, there are 2 things that I basically argue in the book, and I'm thinking about this book for the first time in a little while now, because it's been a few years. But there are 2 things that I argue in this book that comes out in 2013. One is that there's some kind of continuity from the beginning of so-called industrial music up to the present, and that you can trace this continuity, and that in some ways, even though meanings have changed, and in some ways, though, you could say, well, boy, they've really lost sight in the 21st century of some of these ideals that they may have had, in the 70s or the 80s or whatever. The seeds of what it is now were kind of always there, and because it's this thriving, ongoing, continuing set of genre markers and subcultural practices, and because it's people, you don't get to dictate what is and isn't industrial with any sort of top-down approach. And so instead I take the sort of bottom-up approach, the grassroots approach, and say, what is industrial music? It's whatever people call industrial music, right? And so like I might not be a fan of like future pop band A, B, or C or something like that, but if someone says that's industrial, I'm not going to win that battle. The best that I can do is talk about the ways that it manages to fulfill or not fulfill certain criteria, maybe as established previously. And similarly, you get bands like Nurse with Wound, who, back in the day were considered like industrial, and now like no Nurse with Wound fan is going to go out and see like my band Come Through Town, right? Instead they're going to go off and listen to the new release by Sarah Hennies or someone who's doing experimental acoustic composition or something like that. So so meanings change over time, and I try to trace the meaning, trace the change of those meanings. And give a sort of set of best practices for doing so. And the third thing about it is that industrial is a political music. It has always been a political music, and so I'm not afraid in the book of getting a little political. And I have shortcomings. I have blind spots. Like I probably didn't think quite enough about like institutional support and about neoliberalism, in the book and stuff like that. But I do say that like industrial music maybe hasn't been, maybe it doesn't have a perfect record when it comes to talking about women, or when it comes to talking about racial minority groups or anything like that. And that doesn't mean that like one should ignore these topics, or that doesn't mean that that you have to throw out the entire genre, throw out the baby with the bathwater. You can still listen to whatever you want to listen to. You can listen to, literally any horrible person you want to, because there are also horrible people who like fix your car, and yet you still go to them, right? But I do think that if we are looking to do something with this genre that has so much potential, and that has so much political power at its heart, and that has techniques of critique that might still work in the 21st century. We need to think about how to optimize those, and we need to think about what our responsibilities might be, and what sort of signs we can and can't easily take up, and what things we should discard. Maybe a whole bunch of the signs of totalitarianism, that people were working with back in the 80s. Those were cool to work with back then, but like these days, ironic totalitarianism doesn't really work. I mean, like, even Leibach has come out and started to actually talk about what their actual real political goals are, because they're like, you know what, ambiguity is just letting a bunch of fascists in the door, and like, for all that might have been quote unquote interesting, as soon as you let fascists into your bar, it turns into a fascist bar, and I don't want that, and like, for all that I have sympathies for some people, let's say for all that I grew up reading, like Burroughs, or like a bunch of like libertarian inflected authors of the 70s and 80s, for all the affection that I may have felt toward them, ultimately the people who need, or the people that, at least people that I want to be helping right now in the world, are probably not that cast of folks anymore. Like, if I have $50 to give to someone, I'll probably give it to like a mutual aid fund, or like a direct action fund, or a bail fund or something like that, because that's because like real violence, real oppression is really happening in the real world right now, and you feeling vaguely oppressed because nobody understands how you can't get a date, that's not the same thing, right? And I don't want us to assume that like edgelord free speech concerns are the same thing as people being forced into hysterectomies in work camps. Like, that's a different thing. And that literally is happening now. So if there's something that I can do, to either in my music or in my critical writing about this music, say, hey, you've got some interesting, artillery of what you can work with artistically here. You've got some interesting lineages. You've got some really cool aesthetics, do something with this. Don't waste this. Because the last thing that I'll say about this is that some of these attitudes toward, let's say gender and sexuality, that, let's say, goth and industrial music had in the 80s or in the 90s might have seemed radical or progressive back then, right? Like, my partner and I were just talking about how goth has always been a home for certain expressions of femininity or effeminacy, right? This has always been like part of the visual and sonic language of goth music, and that's cool and that's great. But if you look at like how far like pop music has come, and how far like hip hop music has come, somewhere in the last 20 years, they passed us by, right? Somewhere in the last 20 years.
Yeah, okay.
I think that like a lot of mainstream-ish discourse is not everything, right? And they still have their problems, but somewhere, a lot of them kind of passed by these old world notions that we had been operating under, in the 80s or 90s, and you don't want to look around and find that suddenly you're like the old stodgy subculture in the room. And I'm really, really uninterested in just having a subculture whose desire is ostensibly freedom of expression just replicate the same old, tired, oppressive dynamics that like they were trying to escape from in the first place.
Wow, yeah. Damn. I mean, yeah, like it sort of shot out the gate, and then just sort of hung out at lap 3 and let everybody pass it by.
Yeah. And that is what it is, and it's one of these things where like sometimes when you get people trying to do something new within this music, and I was talking earlier about how I love new developments, whether they're coming from me or whether they're coming from somebody else. Whenever you get somebody trying to do something new, invariably there are people who are like, well, this isn't how it used to be, or this is, like I'd rather go listen to some band that sounds exactly like 1987 Clan of Zymox. Okay, sure, fine, and like I love that music, but like sometimes, when I'm reading these comments online, I'm like, geez, y'all are calling out, who are you taking issue with right now? Okay, let's say you're taking issue with like Light Asylum and Salem. Like, oh, interesting. You're taking issues with, artists of color. You're taking in issues with artists who are bringing in outside influences. You're taking issues with like trans artists. I'm like, I'm not sure that this is actually about musical markings and genre. And, we should really be interrogating ourselves, because if the whole message of so-called industrial music is think for yourself, then for heaven's sake, think.
Goodness gracious. Yeah, I we could do the rest of the show on this, but I want to jump real quick for absolutely selfish reasons because I am a giant They Might Be Giants fan,
Hmm.
and you wrote a book on them too.
I did,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
So yeah, like I promise I'm good at parties. I'm not just like a killjoy all the time, right? Um, so yeah, I also co-wrote a book on They Might Be Giants with my buddy, longtime friend and co-author Elizabeth Sandifer. Um, and yeah, so I have a deep love of like outsider musics, weird musics, avant-garde musics. I mean, I just finished a book just finished writing a book on Laurie Anderson's music that's going to be
Nice.
coming out next year. And like I kind of feel like with Laurie Anderson, like if you're going to take like the halfway point between like industrial music and They Might Be Giants, I feel like Laurie Anderson is like halfway in between, which is
Good
great.
stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, so They Might Be Giants, I feel like are this band that a lot of people think is like a joke band, a novelty band, and I find what they say to be completely worth taking seriously. You know,
100%.
they're really interested in looking at the world as as seen like through the eyes of a child. They're interested in looking at how the world instrumentalizes people. They're looking at how things are nothing less but nothing more than what they are, and they're sort of using interchangeability of
Hmm.
nouns and concepts um, and the landscape around them and history to kind of show everything in a sort of strange relief that basically bucks against how mainstream capitalism wants you to look at these things, and they're super cool dudes. I mean, like Flansburgh is someone who's John Flansburgh, the guitarist and singer sometimes. He sits around and he thinks about these things. I mean, these are funny philosophical people, and I think that there's a certain type of nerd who, when we hear that music, it's not just that we say ha ha ha, that's so wacky, that's so random, right?
Hmm.
Because you can get away with that for a song or an album, but they've built like
Right.
a 30-year career now, 35-year career.
Right.
I think that that in their music there is something that kind of issues forth some of the same sentiments that you might even find in some like industrial music or some like really like political music or whatever, but just does so in much like wackier ways. Like Elizabeth and I were talking the other day over chat. Because she was listening to the Seeming song "The Burial," right? And this is the one who's like chorus comes around with this hook of God and God will bury you, nature will bury you, and it's all about how like you're going to die in the end, right? And it's this like giant memento mori, axe head of a song, and we were noticing how it's basically the same thing as this They Might Be Giants song called "Older," which just goes, "You're older than you've ever been, and now you're even older, and now you're even older, and now you're even older." And it's this like goofy, funny song, except that they're saying the same thing, right? It's
Hmm.
saying time keeps passing, and you're going to die, so you should probably start thinking about that, right? And so there's a lot of ways to come at these issues, and I think that keeping a sense of humor is really really important. And I think that sometimes explaining the joke doesn't always make it less funny, much in the same way that knowing the rules of football doesn't make watching the game less exciting.
Awesome. No, that's great. Look, God. Yeah, another topic. Please come back to Space Couch because we could spend any number of hours talking about. Yeah, but that's such a good point. Like, They Might
Yeah.
Be Giants is like the most meaning smugglingest band I think ever. Like,
Yeah.
I'll be
They
listening.
sneak a lot in under the radar. Yeah.
I'll be listening to like nanobots or something for the 8 millionth time and be, holy, whoa, okay, that was there. Like it just,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Well, and like if your aesthetic is, I mean, like I love big, heavy, dark aesthetics, right? Most of the Happy Giant fans aren't like
stop.
that.
Wait, what? I'm kidding.
Yeah, I
Eh,
know, I know. Hard to
eh,
believe, right? But like, they'll have a song like "Stone Cold Coup d'Etat," which is this like goofy song about like people at every level revolting at the next level up. And so there's a scene where like kids are at the dinner table and they start attacking their parents with like butter knives. And on the one hand, it's goofy and comedic, but on the other hand, that's yet just another call to revolution song, right? And if
mhm.
maybe if saying talking about a revolution is not going to get your blood boiling, well, then maybe Stone Cold, coup d'etat will. Everybody needs their song, and so they're just speaking a different language, but they're saying a lot of really important things. So yeah,
I love it. We're gonna brutally cut to the next thing because time is just flying by on this episode.
that's what it
Um,
does.
that's what I am now older than I've ever been. The let's do this. Let's say four of your musical influences have
Oh,
gotten
okay.
together
Okay.
and they've decided to rob a bank. I need to know who's like the high tech guy that like does the camera stuff. Who's driving the getaway car? Who's like the smooth operator face man like guy?
Mm-hmm.
And who's the old school like safe cracker with the stethoscope? So that's high tech, getaway car, smooth operator, old school.
Okay, okay, let me think about this. All right, my musical influences that go and they decide to rob a bank. All right, they show up in the getaway car, and gosh, who is driving the getaway car? Someone whose music just makes me just like, go, 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 push it away. Robert Smith is driving the car, right?
Yes, yes.
Right. I have a feeling that Robert Smith is a terrible driver. I have no idea why I say this,
But
but
no,
like,
he's driving the
well, I
car.
mean, like you listen to his songs, and first of all, like he's reckless in love, right?
Oh
Because
yeah, yeah.
his heart is too big, and he just feels and feels and feels. So that means that he's definitely going to like make risky decisions as a car driver. And so yes, Robert Smith is definitely my car driver because I'd rather have him willing to push that gas to the
Oh
pedal,
yeah.
even if it means that we might crash 1 out of 10 times because we only need to get this right once, right? Because
Oh yeah,
this
yeah,
is the
yeah.
big job. All right, Robert Smith is the car driver.
Absolutely. Like, there's got to be a scene in the movie when the police are going like they're gaining on us, and he turns into the back and goes, "I got the cure," and then like steps on it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
right, right,
yeah,
absolutely. And then like
he
we hear
decides.
the opening of Push, or whatever, right?
Oh, totally.
Right.
So,
Okay. Good.
okay, we
Okay.
got
So, the high tech person, gosh, who's going to be like running all the tech with all the cameras? Jack Dangers of Meat Beat Manifesto.
yes, he
All
is.
right. Okay. I'm just pulling these out of nowhere.
Love it.
Okay, so yes, Jack Dangers is going to be doing this because I think about like video mixing and like the live like classic 80s like mashup plunderphonics kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and I want someone who can like cut records and like make crazy things happen like that all the time. And someone who's ready to storm the studio, as it were. Right?
Yes.
Yes, Jack
Yes.
Dangers, Meet Manifesto. Okay, the old school safecracker, Chuck D of Public Enemy, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, Although I'm going to change your scenario here,
Okay.
and I know that like Flava Flav got kicked out of Public Enemy not long ago, and I can't say anything about Flava Flav as an actual human being, but as a hype man, I do think that he is important to the Public Enemy thing. So I think that he needs to be there, standing behind Chuck, cheering him
Yeah.
on. So like
Yes.
Chuck is like spinning the safe things,
Oh yeah.
and Flav being like, "Oh, Chuck, they had to get us, man."
Oh
So he's
yeah.
he's like right there, right? Good.
Oh, they are so gonna fight the power on
Right,
yeah.
right.
Oh, love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Good. And so yes, boom, they open up the safe and it's black steel in the hour of chaos kind of stuff,
Totally.
right? All right, good. And then smooth operator face man. I'm gonna make it a face woman, and who's gonna be my smooth operator? I think probably um I'm gonna say Diamanda Galas,
Love
right?
it. Oh yeah.
And because if you've ever seen her, like she doesn't hardly ever do interviews unless people assure her that the conditions will be right. She's got this like real classic operatic set of standards that she holds herself to and everyone around her. And
Absolutely.
she's super super professional, super super put together. And if you read interviews with her, she is unapologetically egomaniacal in a way that I love reading them, right? I mean,
Totally.
you read her say, well, there's the reason that I spend so long between albums is because they take this much work and because no one in the world can do what I do. And I'm like, well, the proof is in the pudding. No one in the world can do what you do. So
Oh, I
I
love
guess
it.
I guess you're right, And so
I want to see
trust
this
her.
movie so bad.
Right. I trust her to, to walk into the bank looking all business because she
Oh,
is all
totally.
business, and she's got, the amazing flared, eyeliner going on. And like she and Robert Smith, by the way, the car driver, have like a nod and smile understanding where they never need to say a single word to each other, right? They just
yeah.
have like an eyeliner brotherhood going on, right? Eyeliner sisterhood.
Absolutely.
It's great, right? Anyhow, she walks into the bank and she hands the note to the teller, right? Explaining exactly what needs to happen. And she doesn't need to make a sound, but if the teller gives her any flack whatsoever, the sound that she will make is absolutely ungodly. She will let forth this complete, the thing where she like naturally flanges her voice
Yeah,
somehow
yeah.
without using an effects processor. She will do that, and like the bank vault will just shatter open, and like Chuck and Flav will be like, "Holy cow, the money just all came out. Put it in the bag. Let's go." And like Jack Daniels will be like, "Yes, bring the beat, bring the beat,
Oh
bring the
my
beat," and they all
God.
run out to the car. And then they get out to the car, and then they burn the money on TV for fun.
Yes. Yes.
That's my heist movie.
Yes.
Yep.
Is it Friday? Because I'm in love with that. Oh, so good. Okay. All right. Now, um, I I kind of want to go out on a high note on that. That I want to do this because now like hypothetical
Okay.
brain is like full. Like we hit that turbo strip in the racing
Yeah.
video game.
Bring it.
Um, all right. So, uh, industrial. Real quick, Dre says Sun Ra says she has the most powerful voice in the universe. Yes,
Yes.
she was
Yes.
shattering stuff. Yeah, like if Flava Flav is just like pounding his clock on the safe trying to get it open. If they need to bring in big guns, you can just like. Anyway, all right. Industrial music, the board game. Is this like a Monopoly thing where like a Stompy Boot is a little tin thing, or like a Settlers of Catan sort of like I said, do you trade DJ cred for scene cred? Like, or what do you see as industrial music, the board game?
I think industrial music, the board game, is definitely like Monopoly,
Okay,
in that
okay.
it was created as this anti-capitalist thing, and then everybody misunderstood it.
Yes,
um,
yes. Oh
yeah,
man,
yeah. There we go. Yeah.
you can put down like
People.
clubs instead of hotels.
Right, exactly. And instead of like chance cards, you draw like Brian Eno oblique strategies or something like that.
Like
Um,
you get the scene isn't what it used to be. Go back two spaces and from community
yeah.
chest.
And instead of go to jail, you just go to like the awesome like dungeon goth club where it's like the scene from like every like 90s cyberpunk movie where like the club scene. So like
This
you go to jail and
cavernously
like
giant club.
yeah, and like Rammstein is playing or something like that.
Yeah, of course they are.
It's good. Yeah, I totally think it's that. And like all the properties are like, okay, I'm gonna add like one last bit of like industrial old school realism to this.
Oh yeah.
Instead of there being like properties that you can buy, these are properties that you're squatting, right? And so you can get like really like crappy squats, in like I don't know, in like Chicago near like the Wax Track store, and that's like Baltic Avenue, right?
Yeah.
And then you get around to like Boardwalk and Park Place, and there you're in like Blixa Bargeld spot in Berlin in 1980. So
Nice. I love
yeah,
it. I love it.
that's the board game right there. And
Yeah.
everybody loses all the time.
Everybody
There is
loses
no
all the
winner.
time.
Yeah.
The game was always better 20 years ago,
Yep.
and uh, like little like Moogs are like the pieces. Maybe goggles on the forehead if we're doing the 2003 edition, the special 2003 edition they put out. Uh,
Yeah, which like everybody got for Christmas that year because their parents thought they were into this stuff, but it's like, oh, mom, you just don't get it, right? And I'll never. Yeah.
what is a question you wish you were asked more often?
That question.
Very
I
good.
just want people to ask me what I wish I was asked more often. And even if I was asked that more than any other question in the world, the answer would always be more. I just need more, more, more. No, okay, seriously. What's a question that I wish I were asked more often? Um, Gosh, so simultaneously, like, here's the thing. People get so hung up on, I feel like, the middle ground of everything, right? And I love details and I
Mhm.
love big picture stuff. I love like giant philosophical swaths of conversation, and I love talking about like, okay, here's why the hi hat pattern in Warlock, is really interesting, or something like that.
Mhm.
Like those are the two ends that I kind of want to hang out like all the time at, and I feel like, and this is something that I was saying earlier. whenever people ask about these things, the conversations can get so serious seeming
Mm.
so quickly. And I'm not that serious of a person. And I feel like it's possible to like sit and be in that conversational headspace and be in that space in the world where you're recognizing, the just thisness, the hexaity of everything around you all the time, and still keep your wits about you and still keep your politics about you and still keep a sense of humor. It's not that hard to hold these many things. And I kind of wish that people would ask questions and have conversations that allowed all these things to coexist, and that they wouldn't just get so hung up on, the middle ground or what's just right in front of them without any kind of perspective. I don't know. I guess I just want the networking, the conduit between everything, to be illuminated all the time in some sort of laughable psychedelic shrug. Doesn't everybody?
I love it. I like in terms of like just when you say middle ground, you mean trying to find like the quote unquote answer to something, or that we get so hung up on like I won, you lost in conversation that it's not worth it. I'm interested by your concept of this middle ground.
Oh gosh. Um, I mean, boy, I never want to downplay lived life, because lived life is the only life that we have, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Like there is nothing but like right now and right
Right.
here, and that is the only experience you have. Um, and yet, so like I teach, right? I teach students, and sometimes they'll come in early on in the semester and they're like, "What do I have to do to get an A?" Or like,
Mm,
"Where do I submit this thing online?" And I'm like, "Fine, I'll tell you the answers to these questions, but like, oh my God, please chill out. Like, you're worrying about the wrong things, right?
mm.
You're sitting here wondering, oh no, is he going to hate me if I hand this in 5 minutes late? No, I'm not going to hate you if you hand this in 5 minutes late. But if that's the sort of thing you think about all the time, which to be fair is the sort of thing that the world tells you to think about all the time, right? The world which says you
Totally.
need to make money, you need to, oh, this is my cat Brayburn, by the way.
Oh, kitty.
Oh, um, the world which says, focus on money, focus on friends, focus on popularity, focus on, you know, um, getting enough likes on your posts online or anything like that. All these things that fill up like the to-do list of right now.
Hmm.
They just don't like. I don't want to say that they are unimportant, because that they are, because they are to some people, and they are in everybody's life a little bit important in their own way. But
Hmm.
gosh, I feel like if we can be willing to talk about the small and the large, the middle might kind of work itself out. Um,
Oh, that's that.
I don't
That's
think that
awesome.
that's I don't think that that's 100% true, and I know that there are critiques of this to be leveled, and I know that like
Hmm.
my partner's in the other room thinking, Alex, I have critiques of this right now. So I want to acknowledge she is nodding right now. Yeah. In fact, I will raise one right now. We are going to be shortly, I think, moving house, and the thing that I really need to be doing right now on a practical level is packing, and
Okay.
like there are like boxes right behind me, and I will start doing that. In fact, like in like 2 seconds. So I don't want to ignore those really, really important practical things. But gosh, I I sure hope that we can all build a world where we are able to spend time in the register, high, low, middle, big, small, blue, purple, deciduous, um, that we want to spend time in, and that we feel not only free to move between these registers, but that we feel like we can see all of them, and that we feel like the world is horizonless. And that's really, really hard right now when we're stuck inside and we're all worried about, is the country going to go down into like fascist flames? And like, yes, do everything you can to keep that from happening. Do literally everything you can to keep that from happening. But also know that you do have space right in front of you that you can curate however you want to, within some reason, at least right here in the here and now. And like when you finish watching this on Twitch or on Facebook or whatever, you don't have to doom scroll, and you can go put something nice into your brain, whether that's a taco, or whether that's like reading about famous cats.
Awesome.
Yep.
Alex, we are on a rogue flight path out here in space, and I'm going to bring this spaceship back into the station. Uh, Normally, I leave this till after the show, but I want to say on air, you are welcome back anytime to Space Couch. This has been an amazing episode.
Awesome,
Um,
thank you so much.
Yeah, we didn't even get into the professor stuff. We were talking
Fine.
before. You are not on a global scale that far away from me right now. Now that I live on the east coast of these United States, um, Alex Philosophy, Best Philosophy says Martana on Twitch. Do you have any closing thoughts for us? Let me. I'm gonna pin that for a second because I want to get out all the things you want to check out. Seeming.bandcamp.com for Monsters and Birdwatcher's Guide to Atrocity. Check out that Patreon. You want to check out the 33 to third volume of They Might Be Giants and Assimilate, of course, a critical history of industrial music. I think I got it all. Let me know if I missed something.
It's a lot of things. I mean, like I could be like, hey, I published this thing in this magazine 19 years ago that you can go dig up, but like, it's good. It's good. We're good.
Sounds good, man. All
Yeah.
right. Anything you want to toss out before we hit Space Couch out?
I'd like to toss out the current reality, but aside from that, yeah, be good to each other. Be good to yourself. You know, please don't be a horrible fascist, etc. All that stuff.
All that. Oh, you know.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. I love it. This
Bye.
is Brian for Space Couch, for Alex for Seeming Space Couch out. Yes. Dude, this is such a good episode. We got a pack and stuff, so I will leave you to that.
Uh, yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
All right. Thank you, sir. Catch you, and good luck with the move.
All right. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye bye.